Hello, and welcome to the 50th episode special of Films Under Constant Critique. I'm Bongo Baikov, joined by our host, Maverick Zaria. This week, we're taking a special look at the best and worst movies we've covered on this podcast.
Yeah, it's crazy we've done 50 episodes already.
Yeah, 58 movies in total, because we mixed a few early on.
Yeah.
So, I don't know about you, but
that were technically recorded, at the same time, but I had to split them up, so...
yeah.
But either way, that's 50 episodes.
I don't know about you, but it was a little difficult picking some of these over the other, especially in the top 10 list.
It was, yeah. I finalized it, I think, yesterday. But it was hard. It was really hard trying to decide. The worst list was a lot easier, though.
I feel like my worst list is going to be a little funny just because there's definitely a recurring series in this one.
I think I can guess which one it is, too. Because my list is kind of like that, too.
Yeah.
Oh, my top 10 list is kind of like that, too, as well. But yeah, So, do you want to start with your dishonorable mentions?
Yeah, so my dishonorable mentions, these were movies that were bad, but they didn't quite make my bottom 10. I had Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome.
That was also in my dishonorable mentions. That actually was originally number 10 on the list. But then some of our more recent podcasts pushed it off. So it almost made my list. It was really
that one was pretty close for me too.
Because the first half is entertaining, but then the second half is just boring. And
well, once you actually get beyond Thunderdome, it's no longer an enjoyable movie.
And it just doesn't feel like a Mad Max movie.
Not at all. And I mean, it really wasn't. Just hearing about the production of the movie, it was meant to be something else that got repurposed.
Weird shift in tone. It does have its bright spots. I like the Thunderdome fight. That's fun.
Yeah.
And I think good soundtrack. I like the soundtrack. The Tina Turner songs. It definitely makes the movie very 80s, but...
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But yeah, it didn't make my list either. You can keep going.
Then my next one was Alien Covenant.
That's not in my dishonorable mentions. I'm surprised that's not on your list, actually.
It got close, but there's a couple other movies that we watched that I think are far, far worse than this. It's pretty bad, pretty nonsensical throughout most of it. It's very full of itself. But at least the alien shows up.
I'll wait to talk about that one later.
And then my next one was Alien 3.
Also in my dishonorable mentions.
Yep, it's strange. It's not absolutely awful, but it's not good either.
It's very disappointing, though.
Yeah.
It really feels like a fuck you to people who loved Aliens.
Yeah.
Just killing off Hicks and Newt before the opening credits are finished. I mean, come on.
Exactly. It's such a cheap shot, I feel.
And it's just so depressing and nihilistic. And
yeah. What did save it from being thrown to the bottom 10, for me at least, was some pretty interesting set design. I also liked the design of the xenomorph in this movie. It was interesting to have one come from a dog or an ox, depending on which version you watched.
Well, not the little dog thing running around xenomorph, I'm assuming. That design looked ridiculous. But what the fully grown xenomorph looks pretty good.
Yeah.
I think Sigourney Weaver's good in it, too. Like, her performance. Like, the acting, I think, is fine. Very just... The characters, though, like, most of them blend together for me. I don't remember most of them.
Yeah.
it actually almost made my list, but then I was thinking about it more, and I'm like, it's not that bad, just compared to what came after. But
Yeah.
it was close to making my list. In retrospect, I might have been too harsh on it, but it really just is a mess. It's boring. It's just not a good movie.
Exactly.
It does have Tywin Lannister in it, though, so it does win a few points. So, but yeah,
So, my next one is Batman and Robin.
that's also in my dishonorable mentions.
It's pretty bad, but I mean, it is fun to watch when you're at least looking at Arnold's performance.
Arnold Schwarzenegger's pretty fun. Uma Thurman's fun in it too.
Yeah. But most of the movie is just kind of a huge mess.
It really is.
I wasn't that big of a fan of George Clooney as Batman. He didn't really have much going for him, I feel.
I think he's still the worst live action Batman.
Yeah.
He's just. It's like they literally just filmed like George Clooney right after pulling him out of his trailer.
They probably did.
Just when he says, "Hi, Freeze, I'm Batman," you're just like, "No, you're not." Like, just now, okay, with this one, if you're talking objectively, this would be one of the worst.
Yeah.
Terrible set design, cheesy dialogue. The plot makes no sense. But it almost becomes hilariously bad for me. So
there are points where I do get a good laugh out of it, which is why it's not in the bottom 10
I
itself.
can't hate it. I just can't hate it. It's way too long though. It's 2 hours and it's excessive.
And then my last dishonorable mention is Conan the Destroyer.
For worst?
Yeah, in dishonorable mentions.
Really? That is surprising, actually.
I thought about it.
Because it sounded like you liked it.
I enjoyed it when I watched it, but then I started to realize that I remember almost nothing about the film except for the parts that annoyed me.
Malik, basically.
Yeah. There's one scene that did kind of save it from being the bottom 10. That is that fight scene that Conan has in the mirror room.
And the fight with Andre the Giant at the end, where he stabs the one creature. It's an entertaining movie. It's not a good movie, though.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm surprised that's in your dishonorable mentions. That's like not even. I mean, it's definitely not one of my best. I mean, I probably ranked it like towards the middle of like.
This one was just on the edge of being in the dishonorable mentions.
That being said, when we were doing that review, I was kind of on the fence about whether I liked it or not. So, but after talking about it, I was like, it was fun to watch. It wasn't great, but yeah, okay. There's a few that. So that's all of your dishonorable mentions? Okay. I'm actually surprised Conan the Destroyer was in your dishonorable mentions, because it sounded like you enjoyed it more than I did, so. Anyway, it's definitely not as memorable as the first one, though.
The first one is better by far.
There's a few in my dishonorable mentions that aren't in yours. Hell, maybe they made the list. Alien vs. Predator Requiem.
I can see why that would be in a dishonorable mention.
It almost made the list, but it has kind of an enjoyable B-movie vibe that made me reconsider. Like, I just kind of like I mean, you get what you came for with the Alien vs. Predator movies. Aliens fighting predators, so,
I will not state any of my thoughts on that movie at this time.
Is it on your list?
Yes.
Okay. I had a feeling it was. I kind of like seeing the xenomorphs in a suburban area massacring civilians like it's some fucking slasher film. And also, I again felt like I thought it would be too excessive putting that many alien movies on this list. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, you might have. I think you have a point with that.
Yeah. And I mean, it has kids getting killed. I can't hate a movie with that. So that said, most of the characters suck. The dialogue is just atrocious. And it has some of the worst lighting in any movie I have ever seen. It's like there's literally scenes where you can't see what's going on. It's a very bad movie for sure. But parts of it are kind of fun, so whatever. And it's short too. It's a short movie compared to some of this other stuff. I think it's what, an hour 40.
Something like that. Yeah.
It came out around Christmas time too, which is fun. How do you celebrate
nice
Christmas?
Festive movie.
And the other one that didn't make my list. Okay, this is the tie I was talking about.
Yeah.
So, and you technically said we could choose 5 movies for the dishonorable and honorable mentions, but I have these as a tie because I realized they're kind of the same movie.
Oh boy.
Escape from LA and The Force Awakens. Did you realize why I put these two together?
I'm trying to think about that. I mean, they're definitely both worthy of being a dishonorable mention, but I don't know why they go together.
They're both remakes.
Oh, yeah. Pseudo remake sequels.
They're trying to pass themselves off as sequels. They're both lazy. But they
Yeah.
are watchable, so that's why they're not on the list.
Yeah.
As for which one's worse, who knows? I guess LA has Snake Plissken in it, and the ending, so I guess that one wins. Because the ending is pretty cool, I'll admit. A movie that bad does not deserve an ending that good. And I will penalize Force Awakens because it gave us one of the worst characters ever, Admiral Hux.
Well, that character had such potential.
So I guess if I had to pick one of these to watch again, I'd watch Escape from LA. But I would skip over certain scenes. You can guess which ones too.
Yeah, the surfboarding and the death basketball.
And some of the stuff with Pam Grier.
Oh yeah.
Force Awakens also didn't make the list because it's not great, but it is better than, well, we'll get to that. And this probably surprised you a bit because if you remember our podcast on The Force Awakens and Rogue One, I gave it a pass. But in retrospect, I'd rather watch Rogue One again.
Yeah, the Force Awakens is one of those movies that just kind of got worse after the rest of the trilogy came out because it didn't lead to anything.
By proxy, it's yeah. And I don't even really like Rogue One either. So, just but you know what? Maybe I should give it another shot at some point.
So, real quick, this is something off topic, but there is that Cassian Andor TV series that's a sort of prequel to Rogue One. The first 2 episodes are kind of trash, but the rest of the show gets really interesting.
I'm kind of curious what Leonard Maltin gave Alien 3, actually. I'm gonna see. Probably not good, I'm gonna guess. Alien 3, 2 stars.
Yeah, fair.
So not as good as Batman Forever.
Nope. Anyway, do we want to get into the bottom 10?
Oh, Alien vs. Predator Requiem, he gave 2 stars.
Ooh. Huh.
I guess I could see what he gave Thunderdome. Since I never... Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. And then after that, we'll get to the...
Yeah.
Okay. Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, 2.5 stars.
Wow, so these are all kind of middle-of-the-road movies.
As good as Man of Steel, but not as good as Batman Forever, according to this guy. Okay, so do you want to do your number 10 first?
Yep, my number 10 is Prometheus.
Number 10. Oh, that's actually close to where I put it. It's at number 9 for me.
So yeah, this is just bad, and I hate just about every single minute of this movie. It has a lot of the problems that Covenant also has, but even worse. It's so full of itself without really saying anything. It's a weird criticism to say there's no alien because you don't need to technically have the alien, but it was billed as an alien prequel, and we don't really get any of that.
Yeah, it doesn't really. Yeah. Huh. I don't know whether to talk about this one right now or, like, wait till it's on my list. So, I guess since it's so close to where I put it, I might as well talk about it. Because it's at number 9 for me. It's just it's boring too.
Yeah.
It's not well written.
The only character that I remember, there's only two characters I remember. The one android, because he shows up in Covenant, and the guy that wears the cowboy hat, because he wears a cowboy hat.
The guy that wears the cowboy hat. Wait, is that We're talking about Prometheus, right?
Oh, that's a Covenant character?
The guy with the cowboy hat was from Covenant.
Okay, never mind. I only remember the android.
You remember David? Do you remember that Idris Elba was in it? I remember that.
I don't remember his character.
Charlize Theron was in it. It's because they don't do anything.
Yeah.
Guy Pearce is in it, and he's playing a really old dude that they were hiding on the ship.
Anyway,
Wayland. He plays Wayland in it. That's right.
Yep. It just further goes to prove my point that none of the cast is memorable in this. I didn't really care for anybody.
Actors too. Like some of them are really good actors. Michael Fassbender's a really good actor.
Yeah.
Charlize Theron, she's really good, in the right role.
But they're all just in the wrong movie.
It's also just a case like the plot tries to be really smart, but the characters are idiots.
Yes.
Like, they're just doing shit that they're playing scientists, but they're doing stuff that scientists would not do if they're on an alien planet. Like, touching the, like, slime snake and stuff. Oh my gosh, yeah. I think it has some interesting ideas and visuals, like some of the stuff with the, what are they called? The albino.
Oh, the engineers?
Some of that stuff is kind of interesting. Doesn't really fit an alien movie.
I will say that some of the visual design of parts of the movie look okay, but it's usually stuff that they just copied from the first Alien movie, such as the engineer ship that they end up going to.
That might be part of why I give it a little bit of a pass, because the visuals it's a very beautiful looking movie. But again, good visuals can only do so much if the story and characters aren't all that good.
Yeah.
The reason it's not higher, because it's number 10 for you, it's 9 for me. The reason it's not higher for me, again, there's interesting ideas and visuals, it's just not well executed. Like, it has potential, but it's just not lived up to. And it's not as bad as the rest of this list.
Yeah. There's some movies here that are just, like, absolutely just trash.
Yeah. And it's at least a little easier to distance from its franchise than, well, we'll get to that. As a standalone film, I think it actually might have been okay. Or hell, it could have been rewritten as an episode of Ancient Aliens. It's also just it's not a very good horror movie either.
No. You get through it and you feel like you've just wasted your time, really.
It's too long. It's like a 2-hour movie, too. It's like...
Yeah.
It's slow. It's not good. And that was your number 10. Okay.
Yep.
Number 10 is Leonard Maltin's favorite Batman movie. Batman Forever. That's my number 10.
Yeah, I do have this later on in my list.
I'll talk about what my thoughts on it, and you can talk about it later. I just figured Prometheus, we could talk about that since it's just so close to where I put it.
Yeah.
So Batman Forever. It's not good. It's not. But it has some redeeming aspects, and for me, it's by far the most watchable movie on this list. Like, on this worst list. Like, if I had to rewatch one of the 10 movies on this list, this is the one I would watch.
Really?
Yeah. So again, I think it has some good things going for it. I like Val Kilmer in it. It's Batman and Bruce Wayne. They go into more of his parent, like, some of the psychological stuff with his parents being killed, and I think his chemistry with Robin, what's the actor's name? Damn it, I can't remember his name. The guy from Son of a Woman. I can't remember his name. It's like Chris something. Damn it, I don't remember now. It's been so long since I watched this movie. Oh God. Not Nicole Kidman. Chris O'Donnell. Yes, it was a
Yep.
Chris. Okay. I thought their chemistry in this one was okay. It's a lot better than their chemistry in Batman and Robin, which was just silly. I like Jim Carrey in it. I'll admit. I mean, it's Jim Carrey in his prime. Just going all Ace Ventura / The Mask in this. It's probably not a definitive depiction of the Riddler, but I will say this: when I watched The Batman, I started feeling a little nostalgic for Jim Carrey, so as the Riddler. So I guess there's that. That being said, the reason it's on this list, the main reason, is the butchering of Two-Face.
Yeah.
It's just awful. They took one of the most compelling Batman villains and made him into David S. Pumpkins, for fuck's sake. It's just ridiculous. Like, there's no excuse for the character to be this bad. I mean, and they had such a great concept for him and a great actor, Tommy Lee Jones, playing him, and it's just, oh my God, it's just the potential, and I can't believe And the movie, it's just kind of boring and forgettable for me. Like, I don't really, like, there's a few scenes that are kind of fun, but it's just not a good movie. It's not a good movie. But again, of the movies on this list, this one's at least a little bit shorter than some of them, and there's a few positives here and there, but it's not a good movie. That was my number 10, and Prometheus was my number 9. What's your number 9?
My number 9 is Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. So, I think every time I watch this movie, I end up hating it just a little bit more. It completely took the few things that Episode 7 set up and just kind of tossed them out the window. They basically had Finn repeat the same exact character arc he had in 7, where in 7 he learns that
he's more of a bumbling doofus in this.
Exactly. Because his whole story in 7 was him learning to stand up and fight for what he believes in. And they make him learn the exact same thing in this one.
That was one of my least favorite things about that. Yeah, I was like, because Finn had potential as a character, and then you just fucking like massacred him.
Exactly.
Look at how they massacred my boy. Just like,
and then Poe, who was supposedly just one of the greatest, fighter pilots in the whole Resistance, he ends up becoming a loser. That's always wrong in the movie. Hux, they just slaughtered his character.
I already didn't like him, and then in this one, they made him even worse.
Because he went from being an actual, like, somewhat threatening villain to just the butt of a yo mama joke at the beginning of the movie.
Well, in his first appearance, he was already really caricature-ish. Like, that speech he gives with this, oh my God, it's horrible.
It is, but they tried to treat him seriously in that one. They did not try at all in this one.
And yeah, then they just turn him into, like, just, like a fucking, like...
He's just a punching bag. He's there for the Force users to throw him around.
Yeah.
And then they kill off what one of the more interesting characters of Episode 7 was, which was Snoke. They fully introduce him in this and kill him off he gets like no screen time. There's no backstory to this
It
character.
was disappointing, yeah. They
I
build him up a lot in that first, in
exactly.
the previous one, and then they just don't do anything with it.
And I will say, there are a few things in this movie that I do actually sort of enjoy, which is why it's only number 9. I think it's a very pretty looking movie.
It is, yeah. That's one
A lot of
thing
the
that I
shots
will
look
say
nice.
about it. It's like the
Um,
cinematography is really good. The visuals are all mostly
exactly.
pretty good. You know, it's not a bad looking movie.
And in addition, you know, John Williams did a very good score yet again.
Yeah, some of it was recycled from the other ones, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's John Williams.
And then I really think that's where my praises for this movie end.
So you don't like all the stuff they did with Luke and
Not really. They kind of slaughtered Luke's character. He kind of became just pouty.
or I will admit I do enjoy the stuff with Yoda.
Well, the Yoda cameo was good to see, I will say.
It was kind of fun, yeah, but it's just it's.
But then you know you have to put up with that entire like casino mission that Rose and Finn go on. And it's just like I want this movie to stop as soon as it starts.
Yeah, it's not my never not. I mean, obviously, I'm glad it's at least on your list. I'm surprised it wasn't higher for you, but yeah, because well, I'll reveal where I put it later. That was your number 9.
Yep.
Okay, we're kind of going in a weird order here, but was there anything else you wanted to say about it, or do you?
I think that's. I guess the only other thing I'll say is it also suffers much in the same way that The Force Awakens suffered, where the next movie refuses to build upon it, and it becomes worse as a result.
Oh, yeah, I'm glad that one also made your list. Yeah. Okay, so number 8. I guess I'll say what my number 8 is before you. Since that was your number 9. But yeah, again, we're kind of going in a weird order. My number 8 is Supergirl.
Really?
Is it not on your list, or
It's on my list.
or are you surprised that it's this low?
No, it's on my list. It's definitely on this bottom 10 list somewhere.
I actually almost didn't put it on this list. This was a last minute. It was a last minute addition. It's just because parts of this movie are hilariously bad for me. But then I started looking at it objectively, and I'm like, this is a travesty of a movie.
I'll get in more into my thoughts on it later once we get to it on my list. But yeah, it's a train wreck.
Of all the movies we've done on this podcast, it might be the worst written.
I think I'd agree with that. Yeah,
it might be. I mean, it has some stiff competition, but I mean, but at the same time, it's bizarre enough that I can't put it higher than this. If that makes any sense.
I can kind of get that. Yeah,
I wasn't angry while watching it. Like, I was just confused at all the baffling decisions that were made, and that this actually exists. I mean, just, you're like, what on earth? Like, were they thinking? You know, what the fuck? The number of people that got to be in this is ridiculous. Peter O'Toole, Faye Dunaway, Mia Farrow, Peter Cook. Like, what are they all doing in this movie? I mean, just... And sometimes it was funny, sometimes it was just fucking boring, but it wasn't frustrating for me. But that being said, after thinking about it, I would rather rewatch Batman Forever than watch this again. That was part of why I decided to put it on the list, and I was like,
yeah, that's fair.
If Batman Forever is going to be on the list, I should probably put Supergirl on here. And also, this movie should be a lesson to other movies.
On how not to make it?
On how not to make it, yeah, how not to write characters. But also a lesson that witches should only be the villains in fairy tales or horror movies. Not in superhero movies. But yeah, since it's higher on your list, we can talk about it more later. But
Yeah.
what was your number 8?
My number 8 is also a Superman film.
I think I know which one.
It is Superman 4, The Quest for Peace.
That's my number 7, actually.
Really?
So we can talk about that one since it's so close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a train wreck.
Obviously, I think it might be. I think objectively, it's the most incompetent movie we've done on the podcast.
Yes, it's very sloppy, very messy. None of what's happening really makes sense. And then there's the baffling fact that instead of taking from, Superman's pretty vast rogues gallery, they made their own shitty version of Superman as the villain.
Yeah.
The anti-vampire that can only live in the sun. Like,
oh my god!
what?
Yeah, I still maintain that Nuclear Man is the worst villain from any movie we've done a podcast on. That was just, I mean, every decision they made with that character, like, okay, it's not even just the fact, because for one thing, he's partly Lex Luthor's DNA.
That's right, and doesn't he have Gene Hackman's
Superman's
voice?
DNA. They took it from his hair, which was in a museum for some reason. And then they put that in like a nuke, and then had Superman throw it into the sun, and it just blew up, created a nuclear fetus, and then that somehow created Nuclear Man. Except he's not even powered by like nuclear radiation. He's powered by the sun, so he should be called Solar Man. It just, none of it makes any sense.
And we still haven't mentioned the fact that one of the main characters is Lex Luthor's nephew.
Lenny Luthor, who is just terrible comic relief. Really
awful
annoying character. Gosh. Just, yeah. Pathetic excuse for a character right there. He literally is just there to basically be annoying.
Yeah.
Like, there's no other reason. Just, he, like, talks like a Valley girl and makes dumb comments every now and then. That's really what this movie is, though. It's just because that character is just so inconsequential. And this movie, really, when you look at it, it's pretty inconsequential.
It's also just kind of... It's baffling to me.
It's a dumb and strange movie, but it kind of has a charm to it.
I will admit, there were parts that definitely made me laugh with just how weird and stupid it all got.
It's kind of like just... It's one of those movies, it's where you're like, it's so dumb, but it's kind of hard to hate because of how dumb it is. I mean, you feel like you're picking on it at that point. And it does have some redeemable moments. I mean, it's a Christopher Reeve Superman movie.
Yes,
so
his performance is still very good as both Clark Kent and as Superman.
He's like so charismatic in this movie, and you just feel bad for him that this was his last movie as the famous character.
Yeah.
And like you said, you can laugh up at it. It's only 90 minutes. It's kind of, if you like watch it with some friends and just put it on, it's kind of fun to laugh at. So, again, yeah. Oh, we forgot to mention the special effects. The special effects are just horrendous.
They're pretty bad in this one.
And the editing, it's so poorly edited. They literally cut plot crucial scenes out of the movie.
That's a very bold directorial choice.
And you watch it, and it just doesn't make any sense. It's like so poorly structured, but yeah, it's a bad movie. But again, it's one of those where when you think about it more, you're just like, it's kind of funny just how bad it is. So like, just. But yeah, so it's your number 8, it's my number 7.
Alright, so you want to move on to my number 7?
Sure.
Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. I hate this movie. I hate this movie so much. It's, again, kind of like Last Jedi. Each time I watch this, it ends up getting worse and worse for me.
Yeah. I've only seen it 2 times, but that's enough for me.
It's hard to know where even to begin with how bad this one is. I mean, the whole thing is based off of this unexplained plot contrivance of Palpatine is just alive, deal with it.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Yeah, it's so dumb, and that's also from, like, there was this graphic novel called Dark Empire, and that's the plot of Dark Empire, where they basically cloned Palpatine. And I remember reading that, like, before that movie came out, and just thinking, this is fucking dumb. And then they actually did it in a movie, and I'm like, are you serious?
And then we also just can't forget how strange certain plot points are throughout, because it feels like it's trying to negate The Last Jedi. For instance, the reveal of Rey's parents as just being the children of Palpatine feels so strange and unearned and unintentional.
It's so stupid. Yeah, I remember sitting in the theater and just with every plot reveal, I was just almost laughing in disbelief. Like, it just, the contrivances they had to go to.
There's just parts where it doesn't make sense either. For instance, in that one scene where we see Rey use Force lightning to blow up the ship, it very clearly shows Chewbacca getting on the ship and then Rey blowing it up, and then they're like, but Chewbacca was on another ship. It's like, no, that's crap.
There wasn't even another ship either. It's so dumb. It's so dumb. Everything about this movie. I'll talk about it later because it's higher on mine than it is on yours. But yeah, oh my god.
Lando's just kind of shoehorned in for like 5 minutes of runtime.
It was kind of cool seeing Billy D. Williams back, but yeah, he doesn't really, do a whole
Poe
lot.
and Finn are reduced to complete just comic relief characters.
They fly now.
God.
Oh, and also another thing, they brought J.J. Abrams back to direct it.
Yeah. And I will say there's one last plot point that is still just so baffling to me that it's hard to wrap my head around.
So many baffling choices with that movie.
So, part of the plot is they have to go to this one guy, Orochi. They have to go find his ship, where he has this ancient Sith dagger that'll show the way to the Wayfinder. First of all, that's kind of a weird thing to give a random bounty hunter if you're Palpatine. But second of all, they pretty much say that this is like an ancient knife, but the curve of the knife lines up perfectly with the wreckage of the second Death Star on the one moon.
That doesn't make any sense
at
all. That makes
it's
no
completely
sense.
Nonsensical.
Everything about that movie is nonsensical. Again, I'll talk about it more later when we get to where I put it. But I'm surprised it's only number 7.
Yes, it's only number 7.
That is astounding to me.
Things get worse from here.
Okay. I will say though, I do kind of like the set design in that.
I do like some of the set design, especially
Palpatine's
Exegol.
Base.
Yep.
I think looks pretty cool. But yeah, God, I don't like thinking about that movie. Okay, so that was your number 7, right?
Yep.
And my number 7 was Superman 4, which was also your number 8. Okay. My number 6, I don't know if this is going to surprise you or not. It might. Hercules and Xena, the animated movie.
Disappointed!
You know what? That is on this list as well.
Really?
For me? Yes.
Is it your number 6?
No.
It's a little... How much higher is it?
Not much. It's number 4.
Okay.
So
I guess I shouldn't have asked you to reveal that yet, but yeah, I'm actually surprised it made your list.
I'm willing to talk about this right now because I know during the episode it came off that I think I enjoyed it a little better than you did. But the more I thought about it afterwards, and I did end up listening to the episode, the more I realized that this is just a boring, awful thing to have to go through.
Which is how I felt while I was watching it. Yeah, I thought it was just boring, and yeah, like there were a few. I actually almost put this higher. I think this was number 4 originally. Okay. I think I did have it at number 4, but I decided it's a direct-to-video movie. So I'm like, it's so inconsequential. I mean, so I'll try not to judge too harshly. But it is so lazy. It is so haphazardly thrown together. And it's it's probably the blandest movie we've done a podcast on.
It's boring and it's long.
It's not that long. That's the thing. It's only like 76 minutes.
Long though.
It did feel longer than it was. Yeah, like the animation wasn't even that good. Like
no, definitely out of all the animated movies we've done, this is by far the worst looking.
By far the worst. I'm really curious if the other two made your other list, but yeah. And the fact I didn't even watch the whole thing, I like cut out with like 15 minutes to go. That says, I think that says quite a bit. That being said, it did have some parts which were funny due to how bad it was. Namely, how incompetent they make Hercules in this.
Yeah.
The terrible voice acting, and that bizarre out of nowhere song number, We're the Titans.
Yeah, do a little jig up on Mount Olympus for some reason.
That song, when I was watching that movie, I was like, okay, this movie sucked, but at least it gave me that. At least it gave me that bizarre out of nowhere song number. But yeah, we can talk about it more when it's on. Unless, do you have anything to...
I really don't have much else to add other than it's super boring, animated poorly, and just not very good overall.
It was so, such a lazy... It was a cash grab. It was such a cash grab.
Yeah.
But that's not your number 6. What's your number 6?
My number 6 is Batman Forever.
Only number 6.
Only number 6. There's movies I hate worse than Batman Forever.
I thought that would be like your number 1, or at least in your top
quite.
3. Because every time we would like talk about that movie on the podcast, you'd be like, "It's the worst thing we've done on the podcast." But that's only your number 6.
It's only number 6. But that being said, it is a terrible, terrible movie.
It is, yeah.
You
dislike it way more than I do. So
So I hate the characterization of both the Riddler and Two-Face in this.
Okay.
I find normally I enjoy Jim Carrey's performances and a lot of stuff he does. I just find it annoying in this. Really, it just kind of gets on my nerves after a while. And then of course
it's kind of one note. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also
he's just
weird.
on full psycho mode the whole time.
He starts off as like this really nervous, meek, like scientist, and then he just turns into this
psycho, basically.
He turns into the Mask, basically.
Yeah. That being said, it's not as bad as what they did to poor Two-Face.
Oh god, yeah.
That's quite possibly some of the worst butchering of a character I've ever seen.
Definitely one of the worst butcherings of a comic book character I've ever seen.
Exactly.
I'm only saying one of them because I'm like, there might be ones that are worse. There might be ones that are worse that I'm just not aware of. Deadpool in X-Men Origins.
It's pretty... I don't even know what else to really say about it. Like,
I know you can't
very
stand the
little that
style
appeals
of
to
it.
me.
You don't like the style of it.
It's grody and not in a good way. Like, I think Tim Burton's vision of how Gotham looked was amazing because it was this sort of comic booky, but it also had its own sort of style to it. It almost looked like a silent film in certain parts.
Yeah,
like
that is
German
one thing.
Silent film.
That is one thing worth pointing out about Tim Burton. A lot of his style is like based off of like German expressionist films, like Cabinet of Dr. Caligari.
That's exactly the one that I was just about to mention, actually.
Yeah. Whereas I don't even know, like, I know you compared Batman Forever to like a rave party.
Yeah, especially that one motorcycle scene where it's just all like neon green and a bunch of ravers down in the sewer. Like, what is happening? It's just nonsensical.
It doesn't feel like
bad.
It doesn't feel like a real city. Like all the characters are caricatures.
Exactly.
Well, the villains are. I thought Val Kilmer was good in it.
I think he's okay. Definitely not the worst Batman. That still goes to George Clooney.
Yeah.
I didn't really find Robin's actor very interesting.
He's
in this
better in
movie.
Batman Forever than he is in Batman and Robin,
True.
though.
That is very true.
Yeah. And Nicole Kidman, wasted. She's wasted.
Yeah.
One thing I forgot about, I didn't realize until later, Drew Barrymore is in that movie.
Really?
Yeah, she plays one of Two-Face's, like...
Oh, the Sugar and Spice or whatever the names are?
Yeah, she plays one of them, yeah.
Okay. But yeah, just a weird movie. I don't like it at all.
But again, I feel like people tend to just blame Joel Schumacher for those movies being bad, when really, you look at it, it was more the studio was forcing them to go in a lighter direction after Batman Returns was, scared people out of some Happy Meals. So, yeah. I'm trying to think if I have anything else to say. I don't really think I have much else to say about it. I guess I like it more than you do, but I don't like it either, so...
Are we ready to move on to number 5?
I'm shocked it's only at number 6 for you, though. I'm really...
There's movies that I hate more than Batman Forever.
Like my number 5, which is... do you want to guess what it is?
The only guess I have is what I have at number 5.
My number 5 is Man of Steel.
Yep, Man of Steel, number 5.
Really? Oh, we actually matched up on something. I'm surprised this isn't higher for you.
It's bad, but I do think that there's other movies that are worse.
Like
than
what?
This movie.
I guess I have other stuff above it, so yeah.
But yeah, I didn't expect when we recorded the episode for Man of Steel for me to get as heated as I did.
Which is why I thought it would be your number 1, actually. I thought it was going to be your number 1, because you hate this movie, like, with a passion.
No, it's awful. It's just it's your typical Zack Snyder just crap, really.
Is that why you didn't hate it as much this time? It's just you're like, I mean, I know what Zack Snyder does now, so... You knew what to expect there, yeah.
So it's all just gross and saturated, and there's this weird, like, Christ allegory he's trying to do that's just super obvious.
It's so stupid, yeah. It's so ham-fisted. It's also just such a joyless movie, too.
Exactly.
It's so cynical and
because the whole point of Superman is that, there's hope and that he's, like, showing the best in mankind. But in this, he snaps a dude's neck in a fit of bloodlust. Like, it's so bad.
Yeah, it's a mess. It's a cynical mess with, like, there's no character development for anybody, really. I mean, everybody just seems kind of bored and like they don't want to be there.
Yeah.
Especially Russell Crowe. Russell Crowe is just sleepwalking through that movie.
Russell Crowe showed up on set to get his check.
Yeah. He was probably reading off of cue cards like Brando was in the original film. It does have some positives to me. The reason it's not higher on my list for me, this was one I thought about putting higher, but then I'm like, the other ones just make me more angry. They make me more angry. Part of it is I'm not as invested in Superman as some people are. Like, he's never been like one of my favorite superheroes by any means. I'm more into like Batman and Spider-Man, but although I will say, after rewatching the Reeve films again, I did gain a new respect for the character.
Exactly.
But really, for me, this is just a bad movie. I don't have any, like, personal vendetta against it, like you do.
No, I hate this for a wide variety of reasons. Beyond just it's a bad movie, it's also just a bad representation of Superman.
I guess part of it is you've seen the animated Superman show. I haven't. I don't think I've seen like the animated Justice League show, which is one thing that made, like, when I saw Justice League in the theater, I remember thinking back to that cartoon and thinking the cartoon was fucking better. I mean,
yes.
What the hell? Like, how did they make, like, oh my gosh. And I will say, I like Michael Shannon in it.
Yeah, he's one of the few entertaining moments, especially when he decides to overact.
Like, I still occasionally search up some of his clips from this movie, especially the,
I
like,
will find him!
that one. Yeah, that one kills me whenever I hear it. I like the music. I think the music's good. There's just not much I like about this movie, though. It's
No.
pretty dull. It's just and cynical and depressing. I'm saying this stuff. I'm like, why didn't I put this higher? Oh, wait a minute, because some other movies. I do kind of enjoy the stuff on Krypton just because it feels like I'm watching a shitty sci-fi movie.
And again, I dislike the stuff on Krypton because it feels like a shitty sci-fi movie.
It's just that was like the only part of the movie where I'm like, okay, this is actually kind of entertaining, but you described it as 300 in space.
It's 300 in space.
Which, I'll be honest, I kind of would have loved to have seen 300 in space. That would have made me enjoy 300 a lot more if it was in space. But yeah, I'm surprised we matched up on that one. Wow, that was the last thing I was expecting.
I already covered my number 4.
Which was Hercules and Xena, the animated movie. Which, do you want to say anything more about that, or just?
The one last thing I will say is that the reason that I consider this to be worse than Man of Steel is Man of Steel got me angry to the point where I got something out of it. I felt absolutely nothing except pure boredom watching Hercules and Xena.
Okay. It sounded like you were very mad on it, so I'm surprised. I was thinking your anger at it would be what pushed it over. That one. That's interesting. Again, I'm not surprised though. It was again, I almost put it at number 4, but then I'm like, what am I doing? These other ones are worse. Did you like Xena's song about the eagle or whatever?
That was all just so insanely strange.
There were occasionally some funny lines here and there, I'll admit, mostly from the
musical number.
The comic relief and the musical numbers. I don't remember the name of the comic relief. It's a forgettable movie, that's the thing. Yeah. It's at least a forgettable movie. It doesn't haunt my nightmares. But my number 4, we talked about this one earlier, The Last Jedi.
Yep.
Number 4. And this is above Man of Steel because whenever I think about Man of Steel, I start laughing. Mostly because of the Michael Shannon stuff. But when I think about Last Jedi, I get really depressed.
That's very understandable, though.
But I wasn't sure where to put it because I saw a fan edit of it.
Yeah.
And the fan edit actually made it watchable because it cut out the stupid subplots.
Oh, that's good.
And it added in a scene where Luke is mourning Han. Which I can't believe they cut that out of the theatrical cut. But yeah. And that does automatically make it better than the 3 movies above it on this list. Because I don't think any amount of fan editing could fix those 3 movies. That being said, so much of this movie is just dreadful.
Yeah.
It's poorly written. The plot is stupid. The characters are idiots. It takes a promising trilogy and just crumbles it like oh my god, it's so bad. A lot of the reasons you mentioned basically from earlier. And it's also one of the movies that it makes it so that Star Wars isn't fun to talk about as much now. So it's just
because that last trilogy has left just such a big stain on Star Wars.
And it's such a cynical movie too.
Exactly.
Like, I mean, Empire Strikes Back is dark and depressing, but it ends on
a hopeful note.
It ends on an optimistic note. Even though all this like stuff happened, it's like there's this sense that things will get better.
Yeah.
This movie doesn't, and then things do end up getting worse. But
yeah, that guy just kind of comes back because reasons.
But for what it's worth, this is the movie on this list I've seen the most times.
Really?
I've seen it like 4.5 times.
I think that's the same for me, actually, looking back at this list.
I don't intend to ever watch it again. I don't know if I mentioned this. I don't own any of this sequel trilogy on DVD or Blu-ray. I don't own
Oh,
any.
really?
After Last Jedi came out, it's like, I don't even know if I ever want to see these again.
Yeah, that's very fair.
And then Rise of Skywalker came out, and I'm like, okay, I definitely never want to see these again. But again, we'll talk about that one a little bit later.
I've actually got a friend who has just refused to watch Rise of Skywalker.
I don't blame them. Yeah,
I know, it's like that is the good choice for keeping your mental health right there.
I mean, there's really nothing to recommend.
No,
but yeah, and also by proxy, Last Jedi ruined Force Awakens for me.
Yep.
Like, Force Awakens was a perfectly enjoyable movie, but thanks to this movie, I have no intentions of ever seeing it again. Just, yeah. And again, Rogue One, I don't like that movie, but I would rather watch that than...
Yeah.
Because at least it's just a spin-off. I mean, And Solo, it's an enjoyable movie, but it's just a spin-off, but it's at least doesn't have those connecting tissues, that these ones have. But yeah. But again, I'll talk more about... What's your number 3?
Supergirl.
Oh, okay. We get to talk about this train wreck more.
So, this was the movie that made me start taking notes when I watched movies for this podcast.
You weren't taking notes before that? Really?
No.
I've always took notes on them.
And the reason why is because I was so baffled, so confused, so just unsure of what was happening that I felt completely lost when we recorded the episode. I had zero clue what happened in this movie, and I watched it, I finished watching it less than an hour before we recorded.
Oh, that says a lot. But again,
this movie is such a confusing, just disgusting mess.
It's so poorly structured, though, that I don't blame you at all.
There's no connecting tissue between most of the scenes. Because that was the podcast where, every other time something happened, we had to go, and then we get a scene of.
Yeah.
Because nothing leads in. There's no real, clear, set timeline of these events. It's just, there's a witch in a garden. Oh, now we're going to see Supergirl at college. Ah.
To be fair, the then we get a scene of thing started with Superman 4, but they're both, they have very similar problems. Supergirl has less of an excuse, though, because it's a higher budget movie.
I really can't think of any redeeming factors of this movie.
Peter O'Toole has enjoyable moments, I think, and Faye Dunaway is at least kind of fun as a ridiculous villain. Nothing about the movie makes any sense, but there's a few things you can latch on. I think the music score. You didn't mention the music score. I think
the music was okay.
Jerry Goldsmith, he did the score. I think it's a good music score.
But just overall, there's nothing I can really point at and say I like this about this movie.
Again, it's kind of just one of those where there's parts of it for me that are hilariously bad, but I don't really ever intend to watch it again.
No.
Maybe a few scenes from it, but I don't really. It's 2 hours. It's just, yeah. But again, of the movies on this podcast, that was one of the ones that came close to being hilariously bad for me. The other being Batman and Robin. I'd rather watch Batman and Robin again, though, because Mr. Freeze. We didn't even mention Helen Slater in that. I thought she was alright as Supergirl. It's just
she's in a bad movie is the problem.
Exactly, yeah. The plot to that movie. If you try explaining the plot to that movie, you sound like a madman. They'll throw you in an asylum right next to Renfield or something. It's just, yeah. Oh my god. Yeah, again, I can't blame you for putting it at number 3. It was my number 8, but I understand. It's a terrible movie. I mean,
Yeah.
my only defense is that some of it's funny bad, but yeah. Okay, that was your number 3.
Yep.
My number 3, Rise of Skywalker.
Let's go.
This one's really high on the list for me just because of how personal it was for me that this one sucked.
It really does feel like an attack.
While doing the podcast, I was trying to take the high road on it. I was trying to just be really snarky and try not to be too angry about that movie. But the more I think about that movie, it just makes me realize, like, I was probably doing that just because of how much the experience of watching that traumatized me. I mean, talk about completely destroying a franchise's credibility.
Exactly.
Like, Last Jedi ruined Force Awakens. Rise of Skywalker almost ruined Star Wars for me.
That's very fair.
I am scared to rewatch some of the other ones, honestly.
The only reason I had kept faith with Star Wars, like, that they could produce anything good, is because of The Mandalorian, which came out, like, just before this.
I've watched a few episodes of it, but nothing too substantial. It was decent, I thought.
It definitely gets better as you go along with the series, I would say.
It doesn't make up for Rise of Skywalker, though.
No. Rise of Skywalker is irredeemable.
It's just terrible. It's terrible. The only thing I would say I enjoy about that movie, besides that you got Billy D. Williams back, is the Emperor.
He does have a fairly entertaining performance.
His performance is fun. The explanation for why they brought him back makes no goddamn sense, and it's just the stupidest plotline they could have gone with. But you know, at least Ian McDiarmid looked like he was having fun.
Yeah.
That's the most I can say about this movie. I don't like anything else in this movie, really. God, it's so dumb. It was so dumb, and just it was so insulting. This movie is part of why I'm a little hesitant to call myself a Star Wars fan now.
Yeah, that's very fair.
That's how bad it was. Like, just, oh my god. Just every plotline, everything about this movie is such a mess. And even people who liked The Last Jedi hated this movie. So,
yeah.
You know, I mean,
I don't think I saw a single positive review of Rise of Skywalker.
It's so bad. And for a lot of people, they probably reassessed the prequels after seeing this.
Yes. Because say what you will about the prequels, they at least had a good, cohesive storyline going on.
There was a plan behind it. The execution of it wasn't the best, but there was at least, you can tell there was somebody behind the helm who had a story planned out.
Who had a reason to make a trilogy.
God. I don't even want to think or talk about Rise of Skywalker at all. Let's just move on.
You want me to do my number 2?
What's your number 2?
Alien vs. Predator Requiem.
Okay. I mean, I'm not. It's not on mine, but yeah. I'm not surprised. I think I know what your number 1 is now.
You probably do. So yeah, this
you know what my number 1 is. You know what that is.
I think so.
It's like not even a con. I remember when I was doing the worst list, I was like, I put it in. I knew what number 1 was on the worst list. Like, I didn't even have to think about it. It was the rest of the list I was like trying to figure out.
So Alien vs. Predator Requiem, part of my problem, a big part of my problem, is that you can't really see what's going on for like half the movie.
That lighting is terrible. It's
the choice to film everything entirely in the dark is one of the worst choices anyone could ever make.
It was terrible. Yeah, it's really some of the worst lighting I've ever seen in a big budget movie.
And not to mention, they took a pretty cool idea, having a xenomorph born from a predator, and they managed to make a movie so awful you don't really care about it anymore.
An alien that... Oh, the
Predalien.
Predalien. Yeah, that was kind of an interesting concept.
It's an interesting idea, but the rest of the movie is just so bad. It's like, why?
The characters are so bad.
I don't even remember any of the characters in this one.
It basically ends up just feeling like a slasher movie.
Yeah, but not a particularly good one.
Which again, that's part of why I cut it some slack just because of like I was so sick of alien movies being set in space. I wanted a little bit of a different setting. So this one being set in like Colorado, I was like, okay, this is a bit of a relief.
And as my final little bit on this movie, this was one of 2 movies that I did not finish.
You didn't
because
finish
I hated
this?
it. I did not. I think I got like 20 minutes to the end and I said I hate this and turn it off.
It didn't sound like that when we were doing the podcast.
I don't like it. I ended up having just like a Wikipedia or an IMDb page open.
When we were doing the
towards the end.
podcast, it sounded like you were kind of meh on it.
The more I thought about it, the worse it just gets for me. Like,
that's kind of what you said during like Superman 4.
Yeah.
It's a terrible movie for sure, but again,
yeah.
I can kind of watch it as just sort of this like really gory popcorn movie.
See, I can do that with the first one. I can't really do that with this one.
The first one's better, that's for sure. I will agree with you. Alien vs. Predator, the first one, I think is better than AVPR. Most of the Alien and Predator movies are better than AVPR. Except for some of the ones I'll be talking about, but
And so the very last thing that I would like to say about this, I said that this was one of 2 movies I didn't finish watching.
Your other one is number 1, right?
Yep.
Okay, I know what your number 1 is now.
Alright, so what is your number 2?
Number 2 is also an Alien movie, but not that one. Alien Covenant.
Wow, I did not expect it to be at that position.
I was so mad at this movie. I was so mad. I was so disappointed. For me, this was the biggest letdown of the podcast.
Really?
Yeah, Rise of Skywalker almost was, but I knew it was going to suck before I watched it. It's just now, in retrospect, I realized just how much it sucked. Whereas this one, it had a chance to redeem the series. After Prometheus, it had a chance to redeem it, and it blew it. It completely blew it. Like, you can say what you want about Prometheus. It at least didn't ruin the Xenomorphs' backstory. You have it so Xenomorphs were created in a lab experiment by an evil robot. It's just unforgivably dumb for me. I'm sorry. I just could not get past that plot point. That was just... And it's also just, it was trying to be so serious, too. Like, it's just, oh my god. It's boring, it was long, and it was so generic, too. Like, one of the reasons, it's above Rise of Skywalker, because I had that at number 3. I was at least laughing at parts of Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, there's really no joy to be gotten out of Alien Covenant.
It's just so depressing just watching it and being like, this is where the series ended up. Are you fucking kidding me? This is what we've gotten to.
Well, don't worry. We've got more Alien movies coming out in the next few years, and I'm sure they'll be worse.
I have no interest in seeing it. After this one, I'm not watching them. I don't want to be punched in the balls again. It's also just so nondescript when you break it down into the elements.
Yeah.
Like, just... the camera work's not even that great. Like, the visuals, they're okay, but, like, nothing spectacular. At least Prometheus was really visually colorful. This one's just gray and dull to look at, and just... And it was Ridley Scott doing it, too.
Yeah.
Ridley Scott was the one doing it, and this is what he wanted to do? Come on, like, just... Oh, it was just so bad. I can't... Like, really, the only entertainment I got out of this movie was, like, that bizarre fan theory I came up with during the podcast.
Yeah.
Where I said that John Denver faked his death and became a xenomorph. And that's why they hear the song Take Me Home Country Roads. But yeah, just, oh, fuck this movie. I can't stand this movie. And it wasn't even on your list either, so like
no, it was in the dishonorable mentions.
Yeah, oh my god, but I think we have okay, so number 1, I mean you fucking know what it is.
I'm pretty sure I do, yeah.
I don't even have to say it. Like I didn't even write the title down cuz
is it the same as mine?
I'm pretty sure it is.
Is it Alien Resurrection?
Yes, you knew that was going to be number 1.
God, Alien Resurrection sucks.
It's the one where Weyland-Yutani got bought out by Walmart. Fucking Walmart. God, what a stupid movie.
So this is one movie where I cannot think of a single redeemable factor anywhere.
Which is why it's my number 1. Again,
It's poorly written. It's
Joss
visually...
Whedon wrote it. That's one thing we should mention. Joss Whedon wrote
it. That's a huge negative. Joss Whedon wrote it.
Firefly is actually on Tubi. I've thought about watching that.
Oh, really?
I've never seen it, but it's on Tubi right now.
Yeah, I just found this whole movie just to be awful. The effects are garbage. I still remember like those swimming xenomorphs haunt my nightmares for the wrong reasons.
I think during the podcast I said it felt more like a porn parody of Alien.
It does. It's so bad.
The acting's bad, and they have good actors too. They have Sigourney Weaver, Winona Ryder, Ron Perlman, and Brad Dourif. I mean,
and they're all wasted.
They let the bizarre French guy who did Amelie direct it.
It's bad when Jason X has a more likable crew than Alien Resurrection.
The effects in Jason X are actually about as bad as the effects in this movie. I'm going to be honest, but Jason X is at least...
You get entertainment from watching Jason X. You don't get entertainment from watching Alien Resurrection.
Because the Friday the 13th movies were never that great. They were just hack and slash movies, whereas the Alien movies... It's depressing that they got this low.
Yeah.
I honestly just don't have anything to say about this movie. It's one of the worst things I've ever seen. I don't want to conjure up memories of the experience. It's the only movie we've done on this podcast where I literally just didn't have any positives at all.
It's so bad.
And I'm usually the one I'm trying to find good stuff in a shitty movie. With this one, I literally couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
And it's got another one of those weird plot contrivances where, well, we have to get Sigourney Weaver back. Let's clone her even though she fell into lava.
It makes no goddamn sense. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It's so bad. Yeah. Again, it's kind of similar to what Russ Skywalker.
Palpatine.
Oh, it's so dumb. It's so dumb and so bad, and just... If I was doing a list of, like, my least favorite movies, this would probably be in the top 5. I can't
100%.
It's so fucking bad.
I will say, out of all the movies, this is by far the movie I have regretted the most having to watch for the podcast. It felt like a waste of time.
I've actually seen it twice, so
I'm sorry.
I only rewatched it because we were doing a podcast on it. I never would have done, and it was even worse than I remembered. And I already didn't like it. Like I already thought it was like one of the worst movies ever made, and then I rewatched it. I'm like, it's even worse than I remembered. Oh my god! Like I was literally playing songs over it. And like while watching the last half of it just because I couldn't stand it. Like yeah, oh god, what a mess.
Good night, you stupid idiot. Good night, you miserable slob.